Mr. President, on behalf of my delegation and my own, let me at the outset congratulate you on your unanimous election to the presidency of the 51st session of the General Assembly and to express my happiness to see a fellow Asian from Malaysia, with which my country enjoys the best of relations, preside over our deliberations. I place to you the full cooperation of my delegation. I wish also to thank Professor Tiago Freitas to Amaral for having guided the 50th General Assembly to a successful conclusion. My profound appreciation and gratitude also go to Secretary General Dr. Boutros Ghali for his tireless efforts in quest of a world of peace, progress, justice, and humanity. Mr. President, the past 5 decades have seen the United Nations striving to fulfill its Charter objectives. Yet peace and prosperity, mankind's highest dream, remain unfulfilled. Conflict, enormous cruelty, poverty, hunger, and of late population and environmental problems have been relentlessly on the rise. The United Nations, with its limited resources at its disposal and thus ill-prepared to deal with such situation, has become the increased target of public criticism. The tendency to focus on its setbacks while ignoring its record of real and substantive success threatens to undermine the raison d'etre of this organization. These formidable odds notwithstanding, the world body has achieved a great deal of success in the field of peace, democracy, and human rights. It has many recent achievements in Namibia, Mozambique, Cambodia, Haiti, El Salvador, to name a few. The hope for stability and democracy has been a living reality in those countries, thanks to the efforts of the United Nations. The presence of the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, United Nations Engagement Observer Force, and United Nations Truth Supervision Organization continues to make a difference in the Middle East. Similarly, the United Nations has been effortful to keep and mediate peace in many countries of Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America through recourse to its good offices and through peacekeeping operations. Despite the perceived setbacks suffered by it in some peacekeeping operations, which were undermanned and endowed with no clear-cut mandates, we must not forget the real good that was achieved through the prevention of further genocides, provision of massive humanitarian relief, and paving the way for political settlements. Mr. President, a year ago, many world leaders gathered here to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. With a deep sense of optimism, they took stock of the past and present performance of our organization, as they also mulled over the future course that it may have to traverse. They reaffirmed their faith in the principle and purposes of the United Nations Charter, renewed their commitment to the world body, and pledged their support to enable the organization to come to grips with new realities and challenges. No doubt the 50th anniversary underlined the need to reactivate the United Nations as the centerpiece of international relations, thereby further deepening our hopes in the world body. Nepal takes comfort in the fact that the Dayton peace process has provided a chance to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina to realize their long-cherished dream for a peaceful homeland. The recently concluded elections, we hope, will contribute to a lasting peace in the Balkans, and we take this opportunity to extend our appreciation to all those who contributed to this election process. We are also equally happy to be part of this peace process through our contribution of civil police monitors in the International Police Task Force and United Nations Transitional Administration in Eastern Slovenia, Baranja, and Western Suriname under the United Nations mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We hope that the next local elections will also come about peacefully. Last year at this Assembly Hall, I said that the peace process in the Middle East has become irreversible. This is still the view of Nepal, but the recent aggravation of the situation involving heavy loss of lives and the consequent negative implications for peace has given us deep concern. It is my earnest hope that the recent Washington summit between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Chairman Arafat will restore trust between the two sides and be instrumental in the immediate resumption of serious negotiation within the Middle East peace process. The landlocked country of Afghanistan, more than any other country, has been a victim of the Cold War, and the Afghan people are still suffering from its far-reaching consequences. We hope that peace prevails in that country. Nepal, however, has been deeply concerned at the flagrant violation of the United Nations sanctuary. Mr. President, we believe that United Nations peacekeeping operations are indispensable in the maintenance of international peace and security. Nepal has been a major troop-contributing country to the peacekeeping missions of the United Nations. Over the years, we have participated in various peacekeeping operations with a total of 30,000 troops and hundreds of civilian police. Our commitment to the United Nations Peace Initiative continues undiminished. Nepal supports the ongoing efforts for the establishment of a rapidly deployable headquarters team in the Department of Peacekeeping Operations of the United Nations Secretariat within the framework of a system of standby arrangements to enhance the rapid response capabilities of the UN, a system to which Nepal has made a standby commitment to provide up to 2,000 troops and 200 police monitors. Work on such a headquarters team should proceed in a transparent manner, involving all interested member states, particularly the troops contributing nations. We believe that it should be composed of staffs recruited by the United Nations. The United Nations is unfortunately beset with chronic financial crisis, which has seriously impaired the UN's ability to perform well. Despite the year-long meetings of the high-level open-ended working group on the financial situation of the United Nations, the financial health of the organization is still precarious, and cross-funding of regular budget from peacekeeping account is almost becoming a rule rather than an exception. Continuation of such a practice, which invariably results in late reimbursements to the troops contributing countries, is detrimental to the rapid deployment capability expected of the UN. The United Nations capacity to plan and execute peacekeeping missions will be greatly undermined if the present financial crisis remains. Without a secure financial base, the international community cannot expect the UN to play the role demanded of it in the maintenance of international peace and security. Modern peacekeeping missions involve complex intra-state conflict combined with massive humanitarian relief operations, expose the peacekeepers to an unprecedented levels of dangers. It is therefore only in the fitness of things that these brave harbingers of peace who are put in harm's way are treated on a footing of equality by the United Nations. We hope that a just system of death and disability compensation, as mandated by the 50th session of the General Assembly, will be established soon. Mr. President, for Nepal, the adoption of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty by the General Assembly recently is a landmark in the history of nuclear non-proliferation and arms control. We hope it is the culmination of our efforts to ban nuclear testing once and for all. We believe that the conclusion of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty brings us a step closer to our dream of a nuclear weapons-free world. It is precisely for this reason that Nepal supported the treaty, to which I put my signature yesterday on behalf of my country. The CTBT is only a partial fulfillment of our treaty commitment to pursue in good faith the goal of total elimination of nuclear weapons. With the adoption of the treaty, it has become more urgent than ever that we should seriously consider other priority issues of nuclear disarmament in a practicable, time-bound frame. In this regard, Nepal wishes to underline its support for the program of action recently put forward by 28 NAM and neutral countries for the elimination of nuclear weapons through a phased program. In recent times, substantial progress has been made in the creation and expansion of nuclear weapon-free zones. The Treaty of Bangkok and the Treaty of Pelindaba have established Southeast Asia as the continent and the continent of Africa, respectively, as nuclear weapons-free zones. Indeed, these are steps in the best tradition of the treaties of Talatoloko and Rarotonga that would contribute greatly to the cause of nuclear disarmament and the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. We earnestly hope that efforts will be intensified in the Middle East and in our own region of South Asia so that the goal of nuclear weapons-free zone becomes a reality in these regions too. We are of the view that our efforts towards the goal of total nuclear disarmament must be matched by efforts to achieve non-proliferation of other weapons of mass destruction. We therefore are in full support for measures aimed at imposing a total ban on chemical, biological, and other inhuman weapons, including the production, sale, and export of anti-personnel landmines. In this regard, I am glad to say that Nepal is now at the final stage of completing the necessary constitutional process in order to ratify the Chemical Weapons Conventions, which we have already signed. As a host to the UN Regional Center for Peace and Disarmament in Asia and the Pacific, my delegation wishes to emphasize the need for institutional arrangement for strengthening world disarmament campaign. The Kathmandu Center has contributed to international, regional, and sub-regional dialogues aimed at transparency and confidence building in the area of disarmament and security. Mr. President, in his annual report on the work of the United Nations, the Secretary General has noted that the past year witnessed a determined effort by the international community to take action to end this scourge of terrorism. I would like to reaffirm the commitment of Nepal to the Declaration on Measures to Eliminate International Terrorism adopted by the General Assembly 2 years ago. Mr. President, the reform of the Security Council is considered necessary to make this crucial organ of the UN more reflective of the contemporary realities. We agree that any expansion of the Security Council must accommodate the interests and concerns of the bulk of total membership to redress the existing imbalance and anomaly of representation. Any agreed formula for expansion, in our view, must take into account the issue of equitable global representativeness. The selection of the members of the expanded Security Council should be guided by the contribution of member states to the maintenance of international peace and security. Having said this, I want to emphasize that the Security Council, being the principal instrument of the international community in the area of collective security, no expansion or reform should diminish in any way its capacity for prompt and effective action to maintain international peace and security. Mr. President, the establishment of the World Trade Organization after the conclusion of the Uruguay rounds has made it clear that no one country can ignore the globalization process that is gaining tremendous momentum. At the same time, acceleration of this process of global economic integration has failed to narrow down the gap between the developed and the developing countries. The economic situation of many countries of Africa and the least developed countries is further deteriorating, and these countries are being marginalized because of unfavorable conditions prevailing in the global market in the trade of their exportable products. Furthermore, these countries lack national capacity in terms of technology, product development capability, and also face various tariff and non-tariff barriers for their exports abroad. The situation of the landlocked developing countries among the LDCs is further exacerbated by the high costs associated in the production and transportation of their exportable commodities and difficulty in maintaining tight delivery schedules demanded by the global market. Lacking a direct access to sea and in the absence of significant market base within their boundaries, these landlocked countries cannot offer any comparative advantages so essential to attract foreign investment. Additional financial resources and transfer of appropriate technology, along with concrete measures to offset these inbuilt handicaps, are bare minimum requirements. We expect that the WTO ministerial meeting in Singapore will take into account this reality and ensure that the products of the LDCs are given free and unrestricted access to the world market so as to facilitate the integration of these countries in the liberalizing and globalizing world economy. It is with great distress the developing countries, and in particular the least developed countries, are witnessing the steep decline in the resources of the United Nations operational activities for development. The least developed countries need the enhanced support of these agencies more than ever, as most of the LDCs have embarked on far-reaching reforms. In the absence of the flow of direct foreign investment now available to many developing countries, the LDCs lacking basic physical infrastructure and material resources have nowhere else to turn to. The efforts of the organs of the United Nations system, particularly the UNCTAD, engaged in providing technical advisory assistance to the LDCs, need to be supplemented adequately by Bretton Woods institutions and other regional financial institutions to arrest and reverse the declining economic and social situation of the least developed countries. The solidarity of support received from the representatives of the non-aligned movement and the Group of 77 during the recently concluded ministerial meeting of the least developed countries is the expression of understanding and acknowledgement of the responsibility of the international community to the LDCs. We are confident that the emphasis given by the leaders of G7 at Lyon summit on the need to assist the LDCs and to integrate them in the global economy will be backed by concrete actions. South-South cooperation is another important component of international economic cooperation, which should be further explored and promoted. The government of Costa Rica deserves our appreciation for its generous offers to host the South-South Conference on Finance, Trade and Investment in January next year. In recent years, we have witnessed a decline in the economic conditions of more and more people, especially from the developing countries, now comprising 1.3 billion people living in poverty. The declaration of the year 1996 as the International Year of Poverty Eradication and the declaration of International Decade of Poverty Eradication starting from the year 1997 must be taken seriously to eradicate poverty with renewed vigor and dedication. Eradication of poverty must be a priority agenda of all multilateral development institutions. In this regard, we extend our appreciation to the Secretary General of the United Nations for his initiative to establish, through the Administrative Committee on Coordination, interagency task forces to oversee coherent implementation by the United Nations systems on various cross-sectional issues covered by recent major international conferences. It is heartening to note that one of the task forces, which is on the creation of enabling environment, is chaired by the World Bank. We look forward to the reports of the task forces, which are expected in April 1997. We are confident that the special session of the General Assembly on the Rio Declaration in June next year will be successful in achieving the objectives of acquiring new and additional resources to implement Agenda 21. We urge the developed countries to honor the commitments they have made in major international conferences, including at Rio, Cairo, Copenhagen, Beijing, and Istanbul. We are deeply concerned at the declining ODA level to developing countries, in particular to the least developed countries. We are happy to see that the Framework Convention on Climate Change has entered into force and is being implemented effectively. We are at the same time concerned that the Convention on Biodiversity, which has not been ratified by many countries. I am especially pleased to say that the Parliament of Nepal has already ratified the Convention to combat desertification. Mr. President, we are firmly committed to the Charter obligations to promote and protect fundamental human rights for all, without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. My delegation is closely following the negotiations that are taking place in the working group of the Third Committee of the General Assembly, established to oversee the recommendations of the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action. The Fourth World Conference on Women has been a landmark in reaffirming equal rights of women and focusing our attention on the important aspect of equal participation of men and women in development activities. We in Nepal are serious in implementing the outcome of this conference with the creation initially of a separate Ministry of Women and Social Welfare. Mr. President, political strife, ethnic conflicts, and denial of basic human rights in many parts of the world have resulted in an influx of a large number of refugees, mostly women and children. We express our appreciation to the High Commissioner for Refugees for her untiring and continued efforts to take care of the refugees around the world, despite limited resources at her disposal. UNHCR deserves our special praise for providing necessary food and other services to about 100,000 refugees in the camps in eastern Nepal. His Majesty's Government of Nepal upholds the right of every refugee to return to his or her homeland safely and with dignity. The government will make every effort to solve the problem of refugees from Bhutan through mutual discussion and understanding. As a critical part of our broad policy of peace, cooperation, and friendship with all countries of the world on the basis of the Charter of the United Nations and non-alignment, Nepal is pursuing a policy of promoting regional cooperation and understanding under the umbrella of SAARC, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. We celebrated the 10th anniversary of the organization last year. The 7 countries of the association are engaged in various areas of cooperation, including suppression of terrorism and drug abuse, environmental preservation, poverty alleviation and promotion of regional trade. It is a fact that SAARC is far behind other similar regional cooperation arrangements, but the countries of the association, particularly Nepal, are persevering in our determination to develop both a habit and concrete measures of cooperation, understanding, and peace among the South Asian partners. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished Minister for Foreign Affairs of Nepal for his important statement. We have heard the last speaker for this morning. This meeting is adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.